Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at World War One. Like how it all began.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I think a lot of people
Yeah.
kind of get but don't really get. You know.
Absolutely. It's crucial for understanding the world we live in today. You know, it really set the stage for a lot of those things that
Mhm.
are happening now. You could even call it like the Big Bang
Right.
of the the modern international system. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. For sure. And so to kind of kick things off, I guess the big question, like one of the first things we've got to talk about is like, what what even is a great power? Like how do we even know who the big players were back then?
Right, right. Back then, a great power wasn't just about, having a big army or, a
Yeah.
big economy. It was also about, their diplomatic influence.
Hmm.
It was about how much they could persuade other countries and like really shape global events.
So it was more than just like brute strength. They had to be big,
Exactly.
respected on the world stage too.
Yeah, respected, influential,
Yeah.
they had to have that kind of presence.
Yeah. So it's like hard power and soft power
Exactly.
all mixed together.
Great.
Okay. So now we kind of have a sense of like who these great powers were. But like what was the scene back then? It's the 19th century. We're in Europe. The Napoleonic Wars are over. Everyone's trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we prevent another massive war? Our source mentions this thing called the Congress of Vienna. So what was that all about?
So the Congress of Vienna, it took place from 1814 to 1815. It was this big meeting, right? This big diplomatic gathering.
Yeah.
And they were basically trying to like, prevent another war like the Napoleonic Wars.
Gotcha.
They wanted to create like a balance of power.
Okay.
They didn't want any one country to get
Yeah.
too powerful, to become dominant, right?
It's like they were all playing a giant game of Risk.
Exactly, exactly. It's like a big chess game.
Yeah.
And everyone's trying to like maintain their position and like,
Yeah.
stop anyone from getting too powerful.
Yeah.
And you know what? It actually worked pretty well for a while.
Really?
Yeah, for several decades,
Well-
Europe had this period of like relative peace
Hmm.
and stability.
But at the same time, they're going through this massive, like, industrial revolution, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Huge technological advancements. Everything's changing.
Yeah.
Europe's kind of like going through a growth spurt, like a
Right.
teenager, and
Yeah.
all this new power, all this
Yeah.
wealth, all this technology. It allowed them to like, kind of flex your muscles a bit on the global stage.
Right. So that's where we get colonialism and imperialism coming in, right?
Exactly. It's a complicated story, obviously,
Yeah.
but European nations were able to expand their influence
Yeah.
all over the world, Africa, Asia, the Americas.
And I guess while that's happening, we've got some other empires that are kind of struggling to keep up, like Qing China,
Right.
Ottoman Turkey.
Yeah.
They're facing all these internal pressures, external threats.
Exactly. They're having a hard time adapting to all these changes.
But there's one exception, right? Japan.
Oh, Japan. Yeah, Japan's a fascinating case.
Yeah.
They saw the writing on the wall, I guess you could say.
Okay.
They knew they had to like modernize or get swallowed up by Europe.
Yeah.
So they embraced Western tech and ideas, but they also like, they held on to their own cultural identity.
Smart.
It was a balancing act.
Yeah.
But it worked. And actually, by the 20th century, Japan's a major power.
Wow.
They even defeated Russia in the Russo-Japanese War.
No way.
Yeah. So it shows that like power can shift, and
Yeah.
even nations facing huge challenges can like adapt and come out stronger.
So we've got this period of peace in Europe, but like we know it doesn't last forever. Eventually things start to fall apart and we get World War One. What are some of the big long-term things
Okay,
that
so
led to the breakdown of peace?
well, one of the big factors was actually the modernization we were just talking about.
Oh, wow.
Industrialization, technology, it all led to this like crazy arms race.
Okay.
Nations are competing, trying to build bigger armies, more powerful weapons.
Yeah.
It created this atmosphere of fear and suspicion.
Yeah, for sure.
Because everyone's worried about falling behind,
Makes sense.
It's like a vicious cycle,
Totally, yeah.
One country arms itself, then the others have to do the same, and it just keeps escalating.
Spirals out of control.
Exactly. And it's not just about like the number of weapons, it's also about the technology, like machine guns, artillery.
Ooh, yeah.
These new weapons, they made warfare so much more deadly
Yeah,
than it had ever been before.
It's kind of crazy to think about, like, how all this new technology was supposed to make war, like, obsolete. You know, like people thought, oh, with all this trade and interconnectedness, surely no one would risk a war that would disrupt it all, right?
Yeah, it was a popular idea at the time, this idea that economic ties would prevent war.
Yeah.
Like, it just wouldn't make sense to fight. Everyone's too busy making money.
Yeah.
But, well, obviously it didn't quite work out that way because
No,
history kind of proved them wrong.
sadly. Yeah.
In fact, you could even argue that all that economic competition, like between countries, it actually made things worse,
Oh, wow.
contributed to the tensions.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a bit ironic, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got this arms race going on, economic competition heating up. And then on top of all that, we've got these tangled webs of alliances. Like, how did those play into all of this?
Oh man, the alliances, they were a big deal, a really big deal.
Okay.
They basically turned what could have been like a small regional conflict
Yeah.
into this massive, like, global war.
Like a domino effect or something.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
You have these two main alliances, each with a bunch of different countries.
Yeah.
And they all promise to, like, defend each other.
Right.
So if one country gets into trouble, their allies have to jump in.
Okay, so who are we talking about here? Like, who was on each side?
So you had the Triple Entente. That was France, Russia, and Great Britain.
Okay.
And then you had the Central Powers, Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy.
Gotcha. So it wasn't like they formed these alliances to, like, start a war or anything, right?
Right, no, not at all. I mean, at first they were all about, like, maintaining stability.
Okay.
Keeping any one country from getting too powerful.
Balance of power again?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But as tensions rose, these alliances became, like, more rigid, less flexible.
Oh, I see.
And it created this atmosphere of fear.
Yeah.
Instead of preventing war, they kind of made it more likely.
So it's like the opposite of what they intended.
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow, that's kind of messed up.
It's a good example of how, like, even with good intentions,
Yeah.
things can go really wrong in international relations.
Right, for sure. So we've got these alliances, we've got the arms race. How does all of this, like, actually push Europe closer to the brink?
Well, the alliances basically meant that if any two countries within those alliances went to war,
Yeah.
it could easily, like, spiral out of control.
Right, everyone gets dragged in.
Exactly. And then there's this other thing, this idea called the cult of the offensive.
Okay, what's that?
So basically, people believed that, like, whoever attacked first would have this huge advantage in a war.
Really?
Yeah, they thought they could just, like, knock out their enemy quickly and win a decisive victory.
But wasn't that based on, like, old ideas about warfare?
Yeah, exactly. They were, like, looking at past wars, like the quick Prussian victories and stuff. And they thought, oh, that's how modern war will be too.
But that's not how it worked out, is it?
No, not at all. They totally underestimated, like, how deadly modern weapons were.
Oh, wow.
And how easily things could get bogged down.
Yeah.
It was a huge miscalculation.
So they're basically living in the past
Kind of.
while the world is changing around them.
And that made everything even more dangerous.
Right, because they're not prepared for what's actually coming.
Exactly.
So 1914, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, that's like the spark that ignites the whole thing, right?
Yeah, that's the immediate trigger.
Yeah,
But obviously there's a lot more going on beneath the surface.
right. It's not just about one event.
Exactly. It's years of tensions, rivalries, miscalculations.
So what are some of the things, like the big underlying causes that made this assassination so pivotal?
Okay, so one of the big ones is Austria-Hungary.
Okay.
It was this huge empire, right?
Yeah.
But it was also really diverse, like lots of different ethnic groups.
Yeah.
And that was causing a lot of problems.
Oh, I see.
Like there were all these nationalist movements,
Yeah.
especially among the Slavic people.
Gotcha.
And Austria-Hungary saw Serbia, which was like an independent Slavic nation.
Yeah.
They saw Serbia as a threat.
Right, because they might inspire other Slavic groups to, like,
Exactly. They were worried about Serbia's influence.
break away.
Yeah. And when the Archduke was assassinated by a Serbian nationalist,
Yeah.
Austria-Hungary saw it as a chance to, like, crush Serbia once and for all.
So it was about more than just revenge for the assassination.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
They were trying to, like, solve this bigger problem that had been brewing for years.
And then you have Germany,
Right.
Austria-Hungary's main ally.
Yeah.
And Germany basically gave them a blank check.
A blank check. What does that mean?
It means, like, unconditional support.
Wow.
They told Austria-Hungary, go ahead, do what you got to do.
Mm.
We got your back.
So Germany's basically egging them on.
Yeah, pretty much.
They thought they could control the situation.
But they were wrong.
Big time.
It was a huge miscalculation.
So Austria-Hungary issues an ultimatum to Serbia, which is rejected. And then the dominoes start to fall.
Exactly. Austria-Hungary declares war on Serbia.
Yeah.
Russia mobilizes to support Serbia.
Right.
Germany declared war on Russia and France.
Wow.
And then Great Britain eventually gets pulled into.
It's just like this chain reaction.
Yeah, it's a tragedy of miscalculation and misperception.
Yeah, on a massive scale.
And the result is, well, World War I.
This brutal war that goes on for years.
Yeah.
Millions of people die.
It was a testament to how destructive modern technology could be.
Right.
And how fragile peace really is.
But it also showed something else, right? Like, even with all the horror, there was also this incredible resilience.
Absolutely.
Like, people just kept going, even in the face of, like...
Yeah, it's amazing.
Unimaginable hardship.
People endured so much, shortages, rationing, the constant fear of attack.
Yeah.
But they kept going.
It's inspiring, in a way.
It really is.
Like a testament to the human spirit.
Yeah, even in the darkest times,
Yeah.
people can find a way to adapt, to innovate, to survive.
That's a good point.
And as we delve deeper into the war itself,
Yeah.
we'll see how this resilience played a crucial role
Okay.
in shaping the outcome.
So we've talked about how the war started, all the things that led up to it.
Right.
But now I want to, dive into the war itself. It wasn't exactly a walk in the park, was it?
No, not at all. It was brutal.
Yeah.
World War I was unlike anything anyone had ever seen before.
Right.
You had these new technologies, machine guns, artillery.
Yeah.
They made any kind of attack, incredibly costly.
Oh, wow.
I mean, armies were just getting bogged down in these huge trench systems.
I've seen pictures. It's just mud and
Yeah, it was awful.
death everywhere.
Horrible conditions, unimaginable casualties.
Yeah. And this wasn't just a European war, right?
Nope, not at all. It was global.
Really?
Yeah, the European powers, they pulled in their colonies,
Hmm.
for resources, manpower.
Wow.
So you had people from Africa, Asia, the Americas, all fighting in this war.
So it really did, reshape the entire world.
Oh,
In
absolutely.
so many ways.
It had this, ripple effect.
Okay, so eventually the war does end.
Right.
The Allies win. What were some of the key things that led to their victory?
Okay, so one big thing was the U.S. joining the war.
Right, 1917.
Yeah, the U.S. brought, fresh troops, resources, industrial power.
Yeah, they really tipped the scale.
Exactly.
But wasn't there also this, amazing resilience on the home front?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Even
yeah.
with all the hardships?
People just kept going.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It really shows you, the power of human determination.
But, victory came at a huge cost, right?
Oh, yeah, a massive cost.
Millions dead.
Millions dead, economies shattered,
Yeah.
societies traumatized.
The world was never the same.
Right, things had fundamentally changed.
So what happens next? How do they try to rebuild?
Well, they had this big peace conference in Paris in 1919.
Yeah.
All the victors got together. They
Okay.
wanted to create a new world order.
Like a better world?
Yeah, lasting peace, prevent future wars.
But was there also a lot of, disagreement?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Lots of competing interests.
Yeah.
Resentment, a desire to punish Germany.
Right.
So they came up with the Treaty of Versailles.
Which was, super harsh on Germany, right?
Yeah, it was pretty tough.
I mean, they lost territory, had to disarm, pay huge reparations.
It was a lot.
And didn't that, backfire in the end?
Well, yeah, a lot of historians argue that, while the desire for revenge was understandable,
Yeah.
the treaty was ultimately counterproductive.
Mm-hmm.
It created all this resentment in Germany,
Right.
which, contributed to the rise of extremism.
Like Nazism.
Exactly.
So it's they won the war, but lost the peace.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really solve the underlying problems.
And what about, Wilson's 14 points?
Right.
The League of Nations. Weren't those supposed to, change everything?
Yeah, Woodrow Wilson, the U.S. president, he had all these ideas
Okay.
about a new world order.
Like cooperation instead of conflict.
Exactly. Diplomacy, collective security.
That sounds pretty good.
It did, but it didn't really work out.
Why not? What happened?
Well, for one thing, the U.S. never even joined the League of Nations.
What? Seriously?
Yeah, they had this isolationist sentiment back then.
So the country that came up with the idea
Right.
didn't even participate.
And without the U.S., the League just didn't have enough power
Yeah.
or credibility to be effective.
Oh, man, that's rough.
Yeah, it was a big setback.
But, at least they tried, right?
Oh, absolutely. And, the UN was created after World War II to try to learn from those mistakes.
So it wasn't all for nothing.
Right, the world is still trying to figure things out.
This has been a really intense deep dive. We've gone from the causes of the war to the war itself to
Yeah.
the aftermath and the attempts to build a lasting peace. I feel like I've learned so much.
I'm glad to hear that.
It's crazy how much this one event, World War I, shaped the world we live in today.
It really
Like
did.
it's still echoing through history.
Absolutely.
So for our listener who's like just starting out in international relations,
Yeah.
what's the one big thing you want them to take away from this?
I think the biggest takeaway is that history matters.
Okay.
Like, understanding the past is crucial for navigating the present and shaping the future.
That makes
The
sense.
choices that were made, during World War I and after, they still affect us today.
Right. It's all connected.
We can learn from those mistakes and try to build a better world.
I like that. Learning from the past
Yeah.
to create a better future.
It's a long process, but it's worth it.
On that note, I want to leave our listener with something to think about. How do the lessons of World War I apply to, like, the world today? With all the conflicts, inequality, new powers rising. How can we use what we've learned to address those challenges? It's something to really think about.
Yeah, it's a big question, but an important one.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a journey, but we hope you found it insightful and engaging.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep asking those tough questions.